It has been stung by over 200 bees, bitten by one of Africa's most lethal snakes, dragged by a leopard twice its size, claws deep in its back. Right now it is curling into a shallow burrow it just dug with its own bleeding paws, and going to sleep. No distress calls, no frantic movement, no visible sign that anything happened at all. Scientists who study animal pain, survival psychology, and nervous system function have documented this behavior repeatedly across decades of field research, and the conclusion they keep arriving at is the same, deeply unsettling one. We do not fully understand what is happening inside this animal. The honey badger Mellivora capensis is not the biggest predator in Africa. It is not the fastest. It is not venomous. It cannot fly. It does not hunt in coordinated packs. And at roughly 12 kilograms soaking wet, it is outweighed by almost every apex predator it regularly confronts. And yet, field biologists who have spent careers studying lion behavior, leopard hunting patterns, and cobra strike mechanics, the same scientists who understand predator dominance hierarchies at a molecular level, will tell you quietly and with genuine bewilderment that the honey badger operates outside the rules, not above them, outside them. This is the story of why. The Kalahari at noon is an exercise in brutality. The sand reflects heat like a mirror. The scrub brush barely moves. In the dry season, temperatures push past 40 degrees Celsius in the open, and most animals, even large predators, find shade and wait. A honey badger does not wait. Across the baked pan, a low, wide shape moves with purpose, that distinctive rolling gait, the thick muscular body low to the ground, a silver-grey saddle over a jet-black underbody, small ears flat, blunt claws striking the sand with every step. It is heading directly toward a large termite mound where, underground, the residents of a beehive have built one of the most fortified natural structures in the ecosystem. The bees detect the approach. Scouts launch. The alarm pheromone spreads to the colony in seconds, triggering tens of thousands of individual insects into coordinated defense. The sound builds a low hum that escalates into a roar. The first stings land within moments of the badger arriving at the mound. A domestic dog would turn and sprint at the first sting. A baboon, even a large dominant male, will retreat from coordinated bee defense. Most mammals of this size would register the chemical signal of venom. The accumulating pain, the swelling, and the body's own threat avoidance system would override any competing motivation within seconds. The honey badger keeps digging. This is not recklessness. This is not stupidity. And scientists studying pain receptor distribution in mammals have found something that begins to explain it, but only begins. The honey badger's skin is not normal skin. It is extraordinarily thick, particularly around the neck and back, the primary attack surfaces for both bees and larger predators. Studies on the hide's mechanical properties have found it is loose, rubbery, and extremely difficult to penetrate, so loose in fact that when a leopard clamps down on a badger's back, the badger can physically turn inside its own skin and bite back. Not metaphorically, literally. The skin detaches from the underlying muscle enough that the animal retains the ability to rotate and counterattack inside the grip of a predator that should have already won. But the skin alone does not explain the psychology. Pain in mammals is not a single system. It is layered nociception at the nerve ending, signal transmission up the spinal cord, and then the interpretive processing in the brain that converts raw signal into the experience of suffering. It is that final step, the experience, that drives behavior change, avoidance learning, and threat retreat. Somewhere in that final step, the honey badger's nervous system appears to operate differently. Research published by wildlife neuroscientists studying mustelid pain response has noted unusually high thresholds for behavioral disruption following painful stimuli in honey badgers compared to similarly sized mammals. That is, the animal registers the signal, it clearly feels something, but the behavioral output, the actual change in what the animal does, is dramatically muted. It continues the task. It does not retreat. It does not enter panic. What this suggests, at a systems level, is not that the honey badger fears no pain. It is that its nervous system has evolved to essentially not care. The signal arrives. The brain receives it. And somewhere between reception and response, there is a filter, evolutionary, structural, deeply embedded, that says, this is not important enough to stop for. Biologists call this phenomenon pain dissociation. In humans, it is observed under extreme adrenaline, in soldiers during combat, in mothers during childbirth. The signal is there. The behavioral override is stronger. In the honey badger, this appears to be the baseline, not the exception, the default setting. But the bees are not even the most extreme example. In the Serengeti and across the broader sub-Saharan African bush, honey badgers regularly encounter puff adders, Bitizariatans, one of the most medically significant venomous snakes on Earth, responsible for more human snakebite fatalities in Africa than any other species. The venom is cytotoxic. It destroys tissue at the bite site, causes massive internal hemorrhage, disrupts coagulation, and in most animals of the badger's weight class, it would be fatal within hours. Field researchers have documented honey badgers being bitten by puff adders during predation attempts. The footage and the written accounts follow a pattern so consistent, it has become one of the most referenced behavioral anomalies in African wildlife biology. The badger is struck, it collapses. Researchers watching from a distance often assume the encounter is over, that, despite the badger's legendary reputation, the venom has done what venom does. Then sometimes 20 minutes later, sometimes an hour, the badger wakes up, gets up, walks back to the snake, which it had partially eaten before the bite, and finishes the meal. The biochemical mechanism behind this has been investigated seriously. What researchers have found is a specific mutation in the honey badger's nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, the same receptor sites that cobra venom, in particular, targets to cause neuromuscular paralysis. The mutation physically changes the receptor's shape, so the neurotoxic component of certain snake venoms cannot bind effectively. The lock no longer fits the key. This is not adaptation in the loose, metaphorical sense. This is precise, targeted molecular engineering evolution, so specific that it mirrors the same resistance seen in mongooses, which are close relatives, and in certain snake-eating birds. The honey badger evolved at the genetic level to be resistant to the weapons of the things that bite it. That is not toughness. That is arms race biology playing out at the molecular scale. Now here is where it gets truly strange, because the molecular venom resistance explains survival from certain snake bites. The thick skin explains some predator resistance. The pain dissociation partially explains behavioral persistence in the face of injury. But none of it fully explains the psychological profile. Honey badgers have been documented doing things that no survival optimized model of animal behavior predicts. A honey badger in Botswana, documented by field researchers from the Endangered Wildlife Trust, was observed approaching a pride of lions, not fleeing, not freezing, and successfully stealing a kill from the periphery of the feeding group while the lions watched. A single animal, weighing a fraction of the smallest lion present, walking into the geometry of a kill surrounded by apex predators. The lions moved back. This is not recorded as a fluke. Similar behaviors have been documented across research sites in South Africa, Kenya, and India, where the Asian subspecies exhibits identical psychological characteristics. The animal appears to lack, at a functional level, the kind of threat assessment hierarchy that governs the behavior of virtually every other mammal its size. most prey animals have what behavioral ecologists call a flight initiation distance, the point at which a perceived predator triggers retreat behavior. This distance scales with predator size, proximity, and the prey animal's assessment of escape probability. It is one of the most consistent cross-species behavioral laws in wildlife biology. The honey badger's flight initiation distance, when measurable at all, is essentially zero. It does not run from things larger than itself. It investigates them. And if those things escalate, it escalates harder. There is a philosophy in this that is easy to anthropomorphize and wrong to dismiss. In the deep Kalahari, a young male honey badger is moving at the edges of a dry riverbed. A martial eagle, one of the most powerful aerial predators in Africa, capable of striking and killing small antelope, has locked onto it from above. The eagle descends. The badger does not run. It stops. It squares its body. It faces the incoming eagle directly and makes a threat display. The eagle breaks off. This is not a unique incident. Honey badgers have been documented successfully deterring martial eagles, black-backed jackals, caracals, large monitor lizards, and juvenile leopards through a combination of a specific fearlessness and a very real arsenal. Musk glands located near the tail produce an extraordinarily pungent secretion similar in chemical composition to skunk spray that can be deployed in confrontations. The stench alone has been documented driving lions off carcasses. The animal also produces a specific vocalization during confrontations, a rattling, rasping call that wildlife researchers describe as completely disproportionate to the animal's size. It is aggressive, continuous, and deeply strange sounding. Predators with no prior honey badger experience typically retreat from it. Experienced predators, leopards who have tried and failed to kill badgers before, show avoidance behavior upon detecting badger scent. They have learned. The badger has trained them. In India, where the Asian honey badger, genetically almost identical to its African counterpart, shares territory with tigers, leopards, and king cobras, local indigenous communities have tracked badger behavior for generations. The accounts stored in oral wildlife knowledge and validated by modern field surveys describe the same psychological profile: an animal that attacks king cobras without hesitation, that raids bee colonies routinely, that follows Ratels, the local name, through dense undergrowth with something approaching respect. A tiger, they say, does not eat the Ratel, not because it cannot, because it has tried. What does it mean biologically for an animal to be truly fearless? Fear, in the neuroscientific framework, is not a personality trait. It is a system, an amygdala-driven threat response that evolved across vertebrate lineages because it kept animals alive. Freezing, running, hiding, submitting, these are fear outputs, and they are survival strategies. Fear is not weakness. Fear is information processing, evolutionary wisdom encoded into chemical signals and behavioral reflexes. When fear fails to fire, when the signal doesn't cascade into the expected behavioral output, you get one of two things: a broken system, or a system that has replaced fear with something else. The honey badger appears to have replaced it with aggression, not mindless aggression, not the panicked thrashing of a cornered rat. Calculated, sustained, targeted aggression that functions as a survival strategy, at least as effective as fear-driven avoidance, and in its specific ecological niche, more effective. It is an evolutionary gamble that paid off, because every predator in the African bush knows the cost of attacking a honey badger is almost always higher than the reward. The claws are powerful enough to shred through hardened soil and tortoise shells. The teeth are built for crushing and holding once those jaws close. The mechanical grip is exceptional. The skin resists. The animal fights back. The musk blinds and nauseates. And the psychological effect, The sheer commitment, the total refusal to stop-cost predators, something they cannot easily afford to spend in the wild, energy, and risk of injury. A lion with a broken claw cannot hunt effectively for weeks. An injury sustained from a honey badger entirely possible could reduce a predator's hunting efficiency enough to affect its survival. The calculation, for most predators, does not add up, and the honey badger, in its millions of years of evolutionary history, appears to have arrived at exactly that conclusion. Make yourself too expensive to attack, and never, ever stop. There is one final dimension that field researchers have only recently begun to properly document. Honey badgers problem solve, not in the vague, behavioral flexibility sense, in a structured, observable, tool-adjacent sense that places them among a very small group of non-primate mammals with demonstrable cognitive flexibility. Captive honey badger studies, contentious in the wildlife world, but deeply revealing, have documented individuals escaping enclosures, using sequences of actions, stacking objects to reach heights, using sticks as leverage, consistently testing enclosure weak points across multiple attempts. Behaviors that require working memory, spatial reasoning, and something resembling a persistent goal state across time. In the wild, this manifests as extraordinary hunting adaptability. Honey badgers have been observed following honey guide birds, a genuine cross-species, foraging cooperation to locate bee colonies, a behavior that requires the badger to interpret and respond to another species' communication signals. They cache food. They return to cached food. They adjust foraging strategies based on prior experience. They remember, they learn, they adapt. Add this cognitive dimension to the physical and psychological profile, and what you have is not just a tough animal. You have a small, highly intelligent, completely fearless, metabolically efficient, venomous snake-eating, leopard-deterring predator that has essentially evolved to be the most cost-prohibitive target in its entire ecosystem. The honey badger does not live by refusing to feel pain. It lives by refusing to let pain change the answer. That distinction between feeling and yielding is the entire story. The nervous system receives the signal. The snake venom enters the bloodstream. The bee stings accumulate. The predator's claws find purchase. And the animal's response at every level of its biology is the same: not enough, not yet. In a world designed by evolutionary pressure to eliminate weakness, the honey badger found a different kind of strength, not the strength of size or speed or camouflage or venom, the strength of absolute, chemically embedded, neurologically enforced commitment. We admire it, we document it, we film it, we build memes around it. But deep in the Kalahari, when the dust settles and the predator walks away, and the badger curls into its burrow with a belly full of snake, and the slow chemical process of healing begins, nature is simply doing what it has always done, rewarding the ones who refuse to stop. If that makes you see your own limits differently tonight, you should probably sit with that. This is WildLabs. If this world is the one you want to live in, subscribe. We are just getting started.